Welcome to the Afterspin. Additional comments from our panelists just available on our website. We want to ask each of you, what do you wish you had said on last week's show, but you didn't? John Hood, I'll start with you.
Tom, in the last segment on the broadcast, I mentioned that I looked at some polls in the governor's race before and after the passage of HB 2, and I was noting that there really wasn't a statistically significant change in the race. But the other thing that's noticeable about the most recent polls in the Pat McCrory versus Roy Cooper race is that the average for both candidates is 42%. It's pretty low. And if you look at the national polls, if you look at polls in North Carolina of the presidential race, a lot of people are saying neither. They're undecided. They don't like Trump. They don't like Clinton. They're not sure about the governor's candidates. We have assumed all during this cycle so far this is going to be a high-profile, high-turnout election. I wonder if we aren't going to actually end up with lots of people who just stay home.
Doesn't this kind of foretell that there may be a lot of people staying home?
It could be, but there could also be a lot of undecided voters who ended up breaking one way or the other and surprising us. So we'll just have to see.
All right, Becki Gray, what do you wish you'd have said on last week's show?
When we were talking about the math bill and, you know, whether to integrate the math and whether we ought to have choices in that, which I think we should. But something else in that bill that I thought was really interesting, it's that whether students should be able to choose, but it's also really looking at the standards of math, what that ought to look like. We should have the highest standards in the nation is actually part of the bill. But the other thing, that there's a coordination with the community colleges and the math that is being taught in K through 12 to really get at the repetition, well, the retention, and, you know, take the problem that we have with high school students going to the community colleges and having to take the math classes over again. So that is all part of this discussion. It's not just whether kids ought to have a choice as to which math they would take, but it's really a close look at what the standards are in North Carolina and how we're going to get there and how we're going to ensure that kids are well educated and that we have a well-skilled workforce for businesses and industry.
If you don't think we have a problem with some of this, let the computers go down and see what happens to the checkout line. They can't make change. Rufus, what do you wish you'd have said on last week's show?
Well, Tom, we were talking about that plethora of constitutional amendments, all 24 of them. I wish I had emphasized to the audience that we don't have referendums in North Carolina. People are led to believe that you put out something that people say yes or nay, or that they can have some say-so. Anything that gets done has to be in this Constitution. And almost every single one of those can be done with legislation. And as I reiterated, I will reiterate, the only one I know that you've got to put safely in there is the one on condemnation. Every other single one of those things can be done by legislation if people do their homework and they have some courage.
Should we have a constitutional amendment to allow referendums? No, that's all right. You don't have to answer that.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, Chris, what do you wish you'd have said on last week's show?
I wish Rufus had said plethora on the actual show. And
that was a big word for him. It was a three-syllable word.
We talked about the constitutional amendments, and one of them was the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, or Taxpayer Protection Act, that Becki and others talked about briefly. Interestingly, only one state has passed that by referendum. That's Colorado in the early 90s. They had, for years, had to figure out a way to try to undo it. They finally did, to weaken it. And it's failed in every state since. I think 5 or 6 states. Maine has defeated it twice, and every time it's been the business community in the states that have defeated it because they realize it hamstrung their General Assembly. It makes it impossible to make new investments and create new programs that are important to the state. So it'll be interesting to see if that ever does pass in North Carolina, if our business community will step up and stop it.
Well, thank you for watching the Afterspin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.